Okay, I'm going to start broadcasting now.
The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Okay, good evening, everybody. Thank you very much for joining me tonight to talk about This Girl Can and Sportivate. Before we get going, a couple of things we want to go through. First of all, this is the first time I've actually done a webinar or given one rather than taken part in one. So please bear with me if I have any technical issues or bugs. And then another couple of housekeeping things. If you have any questions during the presentation, please press the raise your hand button and you'll be able to speak to me once it has been activated, or type your questions into the chat box. Where possible, we will answer these tonight. And we have colleagues from each of the CSPs who have been invited to this, so they'll be on hand as well. This is a regional webinar, so the counties we have are Norfolk, Suffolk, Essex, Hertfordshire, Cambridgeshire and Bedfordshire, and they'll be making contact with you after this webinar over the next couple of days to support your Sportivate applications and answer any further questions you might have about tonight's presentation or This Girl Can in general. Currently everybody's muted, so there's no background noise to interrupt the webinar, but as we said, this can be activated by raising your hand as previously discussed, which leads on to my next point. To make sure you can all hear me, and I haven't spent the last 2 minutes talking to myself, can you all click on the raise your hand button now? Lovely, lovely. That's lots of raised hands. So I'm going to assume that everybody can hear me. Of course, the thing with this question, if you can't hear me, you can't ask me asking that question. So, but there you go. Anyway, let's get going. There are 3 or 4 parts to tonight's presentation that I'm going to try and go through fairly quickly. If you do have any questions, please feel free to ask them as we go along. I want this to be as informal and as interactive and as useful to you guys as possible. We're going to start off by looking briefly at the insight behind This Girl Can and the creative that we developed based on that insight. We'll look at the response that we've had to the campaign so far and the next steps that we're planning to take on a national level, but more importantly, what that means for you and your projects and what you're doing, both in terms of your Sportivate applications and any other work that you're doing addressing our target audience of women and girls. And then we'll finish up talking about next steps and who you need to contact for further information and how to build on this. So This Girl Can is a campaign that we set up, started working on just over a year ago. Let me just see if I can get my next slide. Yeah, in response to this statistic that you can see on this slide, more men play sport than women at every single age up until 65, where we start to equal out. And that breaks down into 2 million more men than women take part in sport once a week, and women and girls are missing out. And as you can see, if you look at the chart at the left-hand side of the graph, the gap is biggest among 16 to 24-year-olds. So for our Sportivate audience, there is a big gap here. There's something that we need to address, because this is the age where you are most likely to play sports. But yet the gap is biggest between boys and girls. So there's something serious going on there. And this is despite the fact that as an organisation, Sport England has invested in, and we've created and raised funds and invested a lot in trying to get women and girls to play more sport over the years, but something's not working. So we wanted to understand why, and we dug a bit deeper into our research to understand what was actually going on. And all our research and an insight pack is available. I'll show you where at the end of this, at the end of the presentation. Distilled down into, we identified beneath all the excuses that women and girls told us about why they couldn't do it, reasons and practical reasons, and very genuine practical reasons. But beneath that, there was a series of more emotional or internal reasons why they felt that they couldn't take part in sport and physical activity, or didn't want to, or didn't feel that they belonged. And the golden thread that ran through all this was a fear of judgment. And broadly speaking, this can be broken down into 3 areas. On the left-hand side, you can see we've got the image of the perfect body and what women are supposed to, in inverted commas, and girls in particular. This really affects quite heavily what they're supposed to look like. The way that the media portrays women, the way the discussions about women's body, the perfect abs, the perfect arms, the perfect, you name it, is all there. And it even affects, the picture we have here of Rebecca Radlington on I'm a Celebrity. It even affects women whose bodies are fantastic and they're doing fantastic sporting achievements, but they still feel pressurised by this. And so we just don't see the images of real women and real girls taking part in sport that often. And even in sports media and sports marketing images, very often it's very, very, very aspirational, very hard to reach body shapes that we see. And it's very hard for most of us, women and girls, to connect with that and think, yeah, that's me and that resonates with me. It's something beyond what we would ever be able to achieve. And of course, an awful lot of it, and I don't know that this image in particular of women's health is, but a very lot of it is because it's been photoshopped or artfully shot in such a way that it's not real anyway. So this the body perfect and what that's supposed to look like is a very real disincentive and a real reason why women and girls feel they can't take part in sport or it's not for them. When it comes to ability, we also found that there was a no-win here, really, and that lots of girls were being asked to choose between, well, you can either be a sporty girl, in which case you're butch and you're a tomboy, or you can be a girly girl and be rubbish at sport, but you can't really be girly and good at sport, or, again, there's lots of judgment about what it actually meant to be sporty or to take part in physical activity that they felt they couldn't win. And the other part of this as well is that even women and girls who might up to Olympians who are incredibly good at sport, obviously, and Paralympians, would still feel very judged by that and would still feel that they're not good enough. And then the third way is damned if you do and damned if you don't. Up to now, we've specifically focused on this one as being around young mothers who feel guilty for taking time away from the family. But I think there's also an element here from looking at teenagers who, with pressures they're under with exams and university applications and everything else that's going on, getting on with their friends and everything else that's going on in their life, that to take time out to do sport unless they're very good at it and they can see that they're going to be doing it seriously, if not professionally, is something they feel guilty about doing. And the idea of just going out there and doing something just because you're making fun of it, even if you're a bit rubbish, at that age, I think it's something they find quite hard to get their head around. So I think there's a real opportunity there for Sportivate applications in particular to present sport and activity as something you can just do for the sheer joy of being active and reconnecting with the 8-year-old in you. You should just run around for fun, and there not being a reason particularly. So that's kind of the thinking that sat behind our campaign, and in Bill helping us build our campaign objective, which is very, very structured. Obviously, ultimately, we want to get more women and girls playing, regularly exercising or playing sport. That's what Sport England's about. And we know from our insight that to do that, we need to remove or lessen the fear of judgment, give them more confidence, give them enjoyment in sport and physical activity. We need to create a new way of thinking and talking about women and girls exercising and playing sport that permeates through the way that the sports sector talks to women and girls, the way the media and marketing does, and the way that we women and girls talk to each other, and men for that matter, the way we talk about it. Fundamental to this is not just the national campaign that you've seen and has been so high profile, but it's coming up with material that the whole sports sector, outside the sports sector as well, but they can use to help tailor their marketing materials, their communications, the way they deliver and talk about sport, and create a campaign that really does create that new tone, new images, and that resonates for the long term. I think a really important point to get across here is that this isn't just a flash in the pan, one-off campaign that lasts as long as we've got media advertising money to spend. This is something that Sport England is committed to in the long term. So we want to work with you as delivery partners and the people who actually make sport and physical activity to help you make the most of it and to help you understand how you can use it. It's not something that's going to be here today and gone tomorrow, and we'll talk a bit more about that later. That's the thinking then behind the campaign, and that all distilled down into what we called our campaign manifesto, which is quite simply this. Women and girls come in all shapes and sizes, all levels of ability. It doesn't matter if you're rubbish or an expert, the point is that you're doing something, and that's great, and that's what we want to underpin what we're doing. So This Girl Can isn't just for beginners, and it isn't just for elite. A lot of our communication so far has been skewed towards maybe the either beginners or lapsed returning into sport, or get it if we're talking about older women, or getting back into sport, but it's not just for those, it is for everybody. And one of the beauties of the campaign is that there's an ability to make it mean what it needs to mean for a particular project. This is where we'd normally play the advert, which hopefully you will have all seen either on TVs or cinemas or on YouTube. When we trialled this earlier today, it was very jerky and not particularly useful, and the audio wasn't coming through. So to save me singing Missy Elliott to you all, which doesn't really work, we will pass over this, but this is where the 90-second ad is normally played. If you haven't seen it, we can circulate the YouTube link later so that you can have a look. Just to take you through some other examples of how this is manifested creatively, this is one of our billboard campaigns, and I'm taking you through 3 of our posters in the next few slides because I think it's really important at showing how we have focused in this on the emotional barriers and really trying to celebrate the women who have overcome those emotional barriers to just get on and do sport or activity the way they want to do it, sort of their body, their rules. And this is one of our mantras: I swim because I love my body, not because I hate it. So it's a real positive reason to get into a pool, put on a swimming costume or a bikini or whatever it is, and get out there and do it, and not worry what you look like, and not judge yourself for doing it either. Not worry that you're doing it because you need to lose weight or get a drop in breast size, or even for health reasons, because although that is obviously a side benefit of this, what we don't want to be doing is to be preachy or judgmental or sound like a government health message. This needs to be more celebratory than that for it to really resonate. Most of us know, if not everyone knows, that they should be doing more exercise probably, and that they feel better for it, but that still doesn't easily get a lot of us off the sofa to do it, so it's trying to find a different way into that. The next one is this focuses on ability and the fear that girls we talked about the fact that they're not good enough to take part in sport. I've been raising a lot of our focus groups with I'm not fit enough to go to the gym, or I'm not fit enough to go running. And obviously, as we know, you will be fitter if you go, but that feeling of feeling stupid if you go, or holding everyone up, or not remembering the rules, or members of being rubbish at sporting games at school, and just feeling put off by the whole thing because sporty girls that can do it. So this poster is very much around the fact that, yeah, I might not be doing it particularly brilliant, but I'm still doing it, and that's a really good thing. And I think what's really lovely about Grace, who's our cyclist here, is that she deliberately puts, you can see behind the wording, flowers in her basket to kind of like show to the world that she's doing this in her way. She's not trying to sign up to the next Tour de France or Tour de Yorkshire or Tour of anything. She's just doing it in her way, and she's doing it for herself, and she's poking fun at herself while doing it. And I think that's quite a nice touch. And
okay, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt. Can you just can we just make sure that everyone who's on has got their mic muted, because we can hear some sort of tapping going on in the background and it's making it a bit difficult to hear.
Okay, everyone's saying mute all, so everyone's got a line through, so they all seem to have. But yes, I can hear the tapping too, so I'm not sure what's happening there. It's gone quieter now. Should we see how we get on? I've gone back, haven't I? Hang on. Let me flick forward. Sorry, bear with me. Yeah, and then on to our third one, hot and not bothered. And this is one of our posters that focuses very much on the emotional barrier of being worried about what you look like while exercising. My sister once said to me that she didn't want to go running until she could learn how to run and not look hot and red-faced and sweaty doing it. And of course, if she doesn't look red-faced and sweaty doing it, she's probably at the risk of sounding judgmental here, not doing it enough. If you're exercising, you will probably be red-faced and sweaty, and that's a good thing. And we wanted to celebrate that and have that real attitude that, yeah, this is what I look like when I work out. I do sweat, and that's a good thing. I do have red face, and I don't have to look like I've just stepped out of the salon when I'm giving it my all on the rowing machine or the treadmill or whatever it is. And so that was one of our ones with a little bit of attitude that makes it all about I'm doing this for me, and I don't care what you think I look like. So that's some of the attitude behind our creative, and hopefully that makes sense and resonates. Here you can see some of the women that we've been using in the campaign. I think this is something we've stressed quite a lot, so you possibly heard it, in that none of the women and girls that we've used are models and actresses. They're all real women, real girls doing the real sport that they do. So if we look at Skylar, who's our girl with the boxing gloves in the bottom left-hand corner, she's a 14-year-old boxer from Essex. She loves to box with her false eyelashes on. She's got a beautiful manicure under those gloves. She's a really good example of somebody who's sporty and girly at the same time, and that's what works for her. We haven't airbrushed or photoshopped them. We haven't made them up particularly. This is them doing what they do, wearing the clothes that they normally wear to exercise and doing it the way they normally do. And that's been a really, really important part of the campaign, that authenticity and that credibility. So we have shied away from using Olympian or Paralympian inspirational role models, and that's not to decry the amazing inspiration they can be, but our research tells us that they are so far removed from what most women and girls feel about their everyday life that it doesn't inspire them. They look up in awe, but not in a way that they can connect with them and that they think, yeah, I could do that. It doesn't feel like that. So we're trying to use every woman. That said, although we've used these women, and you'll be familiar with a lot of them from some of our media coverage maybe, or from seeing some of our posters or the ad, these are not the start of it. These are representative of every woman, so we want to broaden and expand and use more women and more girls, and for you to find your own women and girls to celebrate, well, girls, so in Sportivate's case, to celebrate and get involved in the campaign rather than going back to the same ones, because these are not particularly people who sort of done something, you know, amazing. They haven't run 10 marathons back to back. They're normal everyday women and girls. And the response to the campaign has been absolutely phenomenal. I think it's blown us away since we went live with our paid for media in January. We've had 23 million campaign views on Facebook and YouTube of the 90-second ad. We've trended #2 in the UK on Twitter the week we launched, and on Google Hot Trends, beating Kiss a Ginger Day, which is obviously a personal inspiration of mine. And that was fantastic, and that was in a really busy, if you look at the red, green and yellow blocks and shapes, that shows what was trending on Google that day. There were some quite big things going on, so we were above all of those. Some big news stories. And we've built up in 3 months, 5 months, 150 followers on Facebook and 46,000 on Twitter, and we're growing. It's worth spending a bit of time on the next slide just talking about the way that we talk to our girls and our women on social media, because what we're not doing, and I think this needs to go through into the work that you do when you use This Girl Can, is just letting them know when things are happening and just sort of broadcasting information at them. We're trying to have a conversation with them to really engage them. So we'll congratulate them, we'll say well done. If we see them saying, oh, that was difficult, we'll ask why. And we're actually getting into conversations with people, and this is just some of the slides and the responses that we've had in response to that, and the way that some people have engaged with us. I'll slip over these briefly. We've had key influencers engaging with us, from Claire Balding to Caitlin Moran to the woman, whoops, gone too far. I don't know if this shows my mouse, but the girl with the blonde hair and the pink coming out of it is a vlogger that we use particularly to target teenagers. She's called Sprinkle of Glitter. And she helped us get to the teenage market because they are quite elusive from more normal mainstream media. So that's been really, really important in talking to girls in their own way, on their own channels, on their own terms. And I think that's been one of the key learnings for us that needs to be taken on board. Had phenomenal media coverage across the world. So we have become a thing quite quickly and quite substantial. And we've had some great coverage from mainstream media and from magazines such as Cosmopolitan, really, really championing this and really, really get behind it, which is great because that means that some of the media who normally peddle the images of girls that teenage girls can find so hard to live up to are actually starting to talk about This Girl Can and embrace it, and then embrace the idea of an alternative way of promoting women and girls. And I'm not suggesting for a minute that we're going to change that overnight, or that we're going to change that media image of girls single-handedly. But it is having an impact, and they are taking up. So girls will see this in the mainstream media that they go to, where they're not necessarily thinking about sport or activity. It's come out of the sport and activity ghetto, if you like. So in terms of where we are in the campaign, we had big high bursts of paid for media in January, February, and a bit of March with cinema. That's all coming to an end now. With the general election about to be called, Parliament dissolved next Monday, as government organisations we go into a period that we call PERDA, where it doesn't mean that we can't be active, and we are going to be very visible and active still on talking about This Girl Can on digital media and on PR, but we're not doing any paid for media over the next couple of months up until we have PERDA last, until we have a new government in place. So if there are protracted coalition discussions until they're in place. That doesn't mean that partners can't. It doesn't mean that we can't talk about and do This Girl Can things. But apart from anything else, the paid for media gets more expensive because all the political parties are putting up the posters that are going to bombard us over the next 8 weeks. And also, we just don't want to get involved in all the general election melee that will be going on. But This Girl Can is still here over the next 8 weeks. Our paid for media, so the advertising, the billboards, will pick up again sometime in June, where some of the creative that you've already seen will come back, plus some new creative. We're going to be putting in some new imagery of a more diverse range of girls, more and women, and some more disability images as well. But throughout that and beyond that, our partner activation is a really, really critical part of what we're doing. And as I said at the beginning, we are committed to this to the long term. So in terms of your Sportivate applications, which I believe, and George and Ben and everybody will be able to correct me if I'm wrong on this, you'll be working on over the next month or so, and then getting in for May, ready to really start in June with the activities, is perfect timing, because you'll be out there pushing it just as we're very high profile again. So that's really, really nice timing. One of our objectives for the next phase is that we want to be in front of a new sport minister, or the existing sport minister, whoever is in sport minister come June, July, August, and talking to them and showing them how This Girl Can has worked, not just in terms of the great response that I've already shown you, but also in terms of what partners are doing, and that's from sort of big national partners down to small projects, and the actual on-the-ground activation, because ultimately that's where you end up. If this campaign inspires you or encourages you to take part in sport, you're going to end up in a sport club or at an event or an activity or a gym or a running group or somewhere where it's actually happening, and the experience there has to feel connected to what you were, the promise of the campaign. So the way we work with partners and the way we work with you guys is really, really important and critical. It's a work in progress of understanding how best we can do that. So what we ask partners to do is to really push us and test us and ask us the difficult questions, so then we can work those out with you. We don't have all the answers now, but we will be developing it with you and with your County Sports Partnership. So they're going to have a critical role in helping us shape all of that. Before I get into particularly what this means for Sportivate principles, design principles, to help you understand that, I thought it'd be worth taking you through some of the slides that we've shared with partners around the way that we communicate with women and girls through This Girl Can. Because as I already said, is that we don't want to lecture people, we don't want to hector them, we don't want to nag, and we don't want to make them feel guilty for not doing it. They probably know if they're not taking part in physical activity regularly. Certainly women will know. Girls may be young enough to not worry about consequences and things and health messages yet, but they have enough of that swirling around telling them what to do. And I think girls in particular have so many things to worry about doing. They don't need somebody else wagging their finger at them. It needs to be more celebratory than that. We want to be on the same level as our audience, up on a band pedestal. We want to support, encourage and enthuse. And we want to be fun. It needs to be fun and accessible and sassy, and it needs to have a little bit of that attitude. And I think the fun that you can have with teenagers is you can probably up the attitude even more, because that's something they respond to as long as it resonates with what they're actually saying and doesn't sound like old people like me trying to get down on their wavelength and be all youth, because that is fairly hideous for all concerned and can alienate them quite quickly. So there are ways in which we say that this girl can and can't say things, and we've got a summary that I can whip through here clearly. We'll focus on what we can do. So we speak to the girls as one of the girls, and we're all part of the same group. We're encouraging and supporting. We get involved in relevant subjects, and we try and add value to the conversations. And this is where on social media particularly, we don't just repeatedly broadcast activity information or opportunities or where you can go and try something, but we try and have conversations with them in an informal way. But we don't do youth speech or web speak particularly. It needs to feel so correct language and grammar. And with a confidence and an energy. So we don't overuse exclamation marks, we don't get into XOXO or feel too chummy or act arrogantly, and we don't try and use some of those mantras that you sometimes see in sports marketing, where it's all about how tough sport is and, you know, feel the pain and do it anyway and pushing through. And that last one, it is more about something being fun. Though having said that, we have to be careful there as well, because our research tells us, and some of the youth research that we've done tells us, that there are young people who will do sport for a functional reason because they want to feel better or de-stress or lose weight or get fitter, but they won't necessarily find it fun. So we can't convince everyone that activity is fun. If they're doing it, even if they don't enjoy it, as long as they keep doing it, that's fine. Sometimes, well, you'll really enjoy it if you try it, and then they go for their first run and it's hideous. That can put people off too. The slide I'm on now just shows some examples of where we've done some co-branding that works really well, and shows how the lockup that you'll see in our brand guidelines and toolkit, I want to in a minute, really, really works, where people have used their own pictures and their own mantras, such as the rugby can't touch this. They've got their own style, and they've used the logo in a lockup way that we encourage people to do. In a way that's right for their campaign. What we're not asking you to do is create your own version of a national campaign. It needs to be your marketing, your messages, and you can use This Girl Can logos and assets on that. We're working with CSPs, with George and Ben and the others. Sorry, it's a lot of you. To look at how that will work with Sportivate, because we're in danger of having what I call logo salad, where we've got Sportivate, Sporting the National Lotteries here, lots and lots of logos, and they all extract from each other. So we need to find a way that we can suggest of making those all work together. So bear with us on that, and we will look at that and come up with some clear guidelines and suggestions when you need to know how to use them all together. But the principle for all of this is where you're talking to consumers, where you're talking to the girls, where you're trying to encourage those. I think that This Girl Can logo is going to be really key, because hopefully they will have seen it, and so it will connect and they will understand what that's about, and it needs to work from them, not from the organisations behind it. So in terms of design principles for Sportivate, when you're putting your application together, I think this isn't just badging up traditional sport delivery, and I think that's what's happening quite a lot at the moment is traditional activities, taster sessions, have a go sessions, put the This Girl Can logo on without really focusing on the insight behind it. So your plans need to be based on the insight pack, and we have a summary version of that on the partner section of the This Girl Can website that I can that you can register, and I'll show you the address for that on the next slide, where you can register that. So download the insight pack, look at that, and really think about those insights, and consider the emotional barriers that may be specific to your community. You will know, obviously far better than I do, how those specific barriers are even more specific in the context of your community and the girls that you're talking to, and talk to them about that and understand. So it should be really shaped by the target groups who you're trying to get involved, and who may be outside the traditional girls who will come and do Sportivate or sport activities with you. So as well as what activities they want and how they want it delivered, ask them about the practical little things that would make them more likely to attend. For girls in particular, our research tells us that they need to be able to, as one of them said, put themselves back together afterwards, because image is so important at that age. And with social media and Instagram and the instant sharing of pictures on social media, they need to be able to get, however they want to express themselves to the outside world, back together afterwards. So things like hair dryers and changing rooms and mirrors are really, really important to them at that age. And so practical things like that can be taken into consideration. But again, you will understand, the challenges of what you're trying to do, who you're trying to reach, and what those are, but talk to them and ask them. And also the emotional support. I mean, maybe don't go and ask that question because that might seem a bit weird to them, but think about when you don't want to do something, you can come up with all sorts of practical reasons about being too busy or not having time, or it just doesn't work for you. But think about what it is, or what are they actually scared of just turning up to do? Are there things that you can help them to get over that? So that's where I think the friendly face, the welcome, there may be the text message saying, looking forward to you coming down tonight, whatever it is. But what are the emotional things that will make them, that really encourage them to put that foot through the door for the first time? And you need to make sure that that tone of voice and that way of talking to them is embedded in all communications. So the written and verbal, so any emails, websites, leaflets, flyers that you're sending out, but also when you're talking to them and when they turn up at the actual sessions, because if they turn up to a session and it's got nothing in common with the way that you've been talking to them beforehand, it's going to be very off-putting and can put somebody off. And it can just take one thing. An anecdote from today, talking to somebody who's talking to me about how she'd and this is a gym, so I appreciate that's a slightly different project, but she'd gone to the gym in her pyjama bottoms because that's what she wore. She'd been at university in the States, and that's what people did because it was on campus. So she'd been in her pyjama bottoms, which is perfectly fine and decent, and had been told that she couldn't exercise in those, but there was no reason why. They couldn't tell her why, so it was just, no, you can't do that without any. So there was a health and safety rule about flapping material and equipment and things. I don't think it was just a rule that didn't seem to make sense, and that is so off-putting. That it can just stop somebody coming back. And another one which I think illustrates this is a friend of mine who went to a step class, who states it by a few years, I know, but went to a step class, trying to keep up. It was her first one, and the teacher came up to her at the end and said, well, yeah, I thought you really had it for that first couple of tracks, and so she was feeling really good about it, but then said, but then you really lost it, didn't you? And it's just, I mean, this was a few years ago, so hopefully we'd all have a bit more emotional intelligence than that these days, but it's little things like that that can just absolutely kill someone's enthusiasm stone dead, and maybe sometimes harder for people who are really comfortable in a sporting and exercising environment to understand all the little things that might seem to them like a challenge to rise to, can actually just turn somebody who isn't used to feeling like they belong there to really put them off. And then the final bullet point is the importance of social media in talking to, engaging, encouraging, celebrating the girls. And I appreciate, obviously, with social media, depending on the age groups you're dealing with, there are some challenges in there. So obviously that needs to be factored in as well. But social media can have a really good way of getting them to talk to each other and share and celebrate and be part of it and just remind and encourage. So that is a bit of a whistle-stop tour to everything that we've done. In terms of next steps, as an organisation who wants to use This Girl Can branding and use and get access to all the assets that we have, if you go to thisgirlcan.co.uk register, you will log in, and once we've approved your application, which happens quite quickly within 48 hours, you will be able to access the partner area that you can see. If you can see my mouse, I don't know if that works, over here, where you can see there's a number of resources. We are growing this quite a lot. So at the moment, it's mainly around the logo, the brand guidelines, that you can download and use, but there's going to be a lot more added over the coming weeks, so keep an eye on that. Also, once you've registered, we will be emailing sporadically letting you know when the updates. So that's a really important thing. And by signing up to that partner and being approved, you automatically become a licensee, which means that you're allowed to use our assets in accordance with our brand guidelines that you can also download. This is also where you can get the insight pack that I recommended. So I would start with that and reading that and really trying to understand that, which is step 2. And then, of course, talk to your CSP. All 6 of them are going to be in touch with you over the coming days to reflect on this, talk to you about your projects and your applications, and think about Sportivate and any other projects that you've got that you feel this skill can be relevant to. Like I say, it's not just for beginners, it's not just for novices, but it can be used in different ways to try and add value to the work that you're doing, and think of ways of getting women and girls back into sport or playing it more regularly or feeling proud and celebrating what they're doing. And we want our partners to use it, and that's where this campaign lives and breathes, really. So that's one of the most critical points to get across, is we really want you to use it and to let us know what you need to know to help you use it more. And that's pretty much the presentation. So now it's over to any questions, really. And if there's anything that you want to know, oops, no, I've gone over too quickly. So I guess this is where, if you can, I can't see them all. There's lots of hands up, I've suddenly realised, sorry. It doesn't show well on my screen. So if I start going through those one at a time, so Sarah, I think, hang on, right, bear with me while I try and remember how to do this again. So we've got 4 questions in the chat room. Ben and George, can you see the hands raised? Hello? Hello? Is there anybody there? Right, okay, bear with me if you can hear me, because I can't hear you and I'm just trying to understand why. Okay, right. So Louise Gallagher, do you have a question? Can you hear me? Can anybody hear me? Okay, thank you, Randy. You can hear me. Okay. Alec, I think is the way this is supposed to work now. Okay, Ben or George, if you know how this is supposed to work, do I go through and unmute people one at a time to get them to ask their question? Or am I now in? Okay, guys, I'm really sorry about this. There are some written questions that have come in on the chat box. So why don't I focus on that one, and then we'll try and work out how this hands up thing actually works. I did warn you. Yeah, sorry about this. So hang on. Okay, so Mike Harrison has asked how much does deprivation affect participation and examples of overcoming this. That's if we look at our active people survey results, then under lower socioeconomic groups, that has dipped down this year. So that's something we're looking at. I don't have any insight to it at hand at the moment, but that's something that we're going to be focusing on and looking at. So I don't have any examples at the moment, but this is a question I can take away and talk to our insight team about, Mike. Okay, yeah, the 14 to 45 year, that's a really good question. This campaign isn't exclusively limited to 14 to 40-year-olds. We're happy to go younger and we're happy to go older than that. In terms of our media buying, we needed to focus media spend to get the best value for your money, and that's where the biggest gap between male and female participation is based. But that doesn't mean that if you've got projects and programs and activities and groups who are focusing on over 40s, that you can't use this Girl Can for them. It can go up to any age group, and we're happy and we'd really love to work with you and see what you're doing on that. So please do. It's not cut off at 40. Annika has asked about funding available to support these projects, not directly through Sport England. The campaign itself, we put the investment into that. obviously all our other funding channels, referencing the Skill Can and bringing that in. So if you're applying through small grants or through any of, or Inspired or any of the other funding programs that we have, are still open and available to you. So although we don't have this particular Skill Can funding stream, that is one that you can use our other funding channels, and CSP should be able to offer advice on that, I think. Okay, I'm trying to work out how I unmute you all. So Ali, in terms of the funding cover 14 to 40-year-olds, again, that depends what funding you're applying for. Our various projects and campaigns and funding focus that you can apply for. It will vary that because we don't have funding specifically through This Girl Can, then it's not specifically limited to that age range at all. Okay, now are there any more written questions while I try and understand this muting issue? Right, so Louise, you had your hand up. Can you speak now, Louise? I've just unmuted you. I think I need to unmute you one at a time to speak. So do you still have a question first, Louisa? Or Louise, sorry. No, okay. Okay. Yeah, I think the questions up thing isn't working particularly well. May I suggest if you have a question that you haven't asked that you type it into the chat box, because I think that's working better than the mute. And then the mute, then the putting the hands up and asking a question. Okay. I am busy unmuting you all, so that will increase the background noise, I think. But I'm not sure how else to do this. Sorry. Okay, so I've had one more written question from Debbie. Thank you, Debbie. Let me just read this long one. Sorry. Yes, absolutely. So Debbie is currently running a Mothers and Daughters Basketball Fitness Club, where mums bring along daughters aged between 5 and 15. It's a fun type of program. It's the type of thing that would be considered through Sportivate funding, no, but absolutely as a Skill Can project and program, that would be fantastic, and that is absolutely something we would love to see co-branded with This Girl Can. In terms of funding, you would need to go through Sport England's normal funding application and funding channels, but absolutely, I think the role that mothers can play in terms of spending time with their daughters, and in fact, actually from some of the youth research that we've been doing separately to This Girl Can, there's quite a lot of groups of teenage girls who tell us that their mothers are actually, and spending time with their mothers is one of the biggest influences. So doing things with them and encouraging them to do things together and active is really great. So absolutely, yes, that would tick a number of boxes. I will find out when our Youth Insight is being made available as well, because that will obviously be very, very relevant to Sportivate applications in particular, but other projects that you're doing too. So I will find out and then feed that in through the guys and the CSPs when that will be available. Okay, are there any more questions? I'm aware it's 20 to 8 and you've probably all got lives to lead. If you do have any more questions, this is sort of the going on bit of this, then please, probably the best thing to do is to feed them through your CSPs rather than directly to me, just because my inbox is so busy at the moment with all of this, and there's in danger of being lost, but they'll be able to coordinate and then maybe send them all through to me sort of as one, and then we can get back to you, but we can get back to you really, really quickly. Oh, one more question. That's a really interesting question around childcare. So the question is, how important is childcare in terms of removing a barrier to participation? That is a very practical and obvious barrier, but what we found in the past is where we have, through funds that we might have come across in the past, like Active Women, where we have funded the provision of creches and done things at the same time, so as classes, so that women can somewhat leave their children, and some of the work we've done in Bury, where we've done the I Will If You Will project, where we've done a very local activation campaign and we've funded creches, is having a creche really, really helps and can really help, but not on its own. It needs to have those emotional barriers addressed as well, so that the women feel safe and comfortable going there, safe and comfortable leaving their child there. So it's the two together. So when we talk, this is really important, when we talk about the emotional barriers and digging down to understand those, that's not to decry the practical barriers. Not having enough time, not having access to childcare are really important practical barriers that we have to find ways around. So looking at where the timings of where things are delivered, looking at childcare is really important, but just fixing those practical reasons on their own won't do it. You need to do the emotional things as well that will really reassure and encourage and take someone's hand as they, maybe not literally, that might sound creepy, but take somebody through the front door and really encourage them all the way through so they feel comfortable doing it. Okay. Oh, John, that's really interesting. Thank you. I didn't know that. Sorry. John Mern, who's our Sportivate lead, has pointed out that they're having several Sportivate projects, including childcare for young mums across the country. So that's fantastic. And I'm sure we can get, I'm making promises that no one can disagree with me on this because none of you can speak, that we can get details and some of the learnings from those and share those too. Oh, sort of the top line details of that. I'll catch up with John about that. Okay, are there... Great, yeah, so yeah, 7 Young Mums is a good example of that, I believe, but we will share those with you all. Okay, I think some people have lost sound. I don't know why that is or what that is, but I think if we call that a night for now, but I can say please do feed any more questions in through your Countersports partnership and let us know how you're getting on. And if there's any questions around not just the marketing and the communication of this Girl Can, but what it actually means in terms of designing a session or an activity and opportunity, please do get in touch and we'll be really, really happy to help you. We need you guys to really help this make a difference on the ground. So thank you very much for your attention tonight. I hope that technology has been helpful and not too much of a hindrance. And sorry I couldn't speak directly with more of you. And have a nice evening. Thank you very much. Good night, everybody.